Hey everybody, I'm making a video for your practice assignment for rate and rhythm. This is for Cal State Fullerton Fall 2020 Clinical Exercise Physiology. And this is for EKG practice for sinus rhythms and irregular rhythms. So what we'll do is we're going to go over some of these practice EKGs and hopefully it helps you guys out, understand a little bit more, and prepare you for the rest of the class and get you ready for the quiz. Okay, so you will have seen and hopefully remember that we have broken down analyzing EKGs into a step pattern or a step format. So always want to start with step number 1. Okay, so make sure that you are checking for regularity. All right, so we'll do this. I'll take my little annotation tool and we'll come across here and just follow along with me. We're going to slide all the way across here. And we're checking for regularity between QRS to QRS. Looks good. Those are lining up. Okay. That one's okay too. Off just a hair, but that's okay. So for the most part, the majority of it is regular. All right, so that's good. And step 2, make sure you're checking your waves. All right, so you want to check your waves. Check your P wave, QRS, T, P, QRS, T, T, P, QRS, T, P, QRS, T, P, QRS, T, and P, QRS, and T. So all of those waves are there, right? Every single P has a QRS behind it, and every single P has the same shape, and that's what's important here, because that gives us insight as to, well, how many cells are firing? We have one cell firing here, meaning it's going to be consistent, which we just verified by checking for regularity, because regularity is going to help us identify this guys here. Get rid of you guys here. All right. Perfect. Step 1 and step 2 are done. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at our PR interval and our QRS interval. All right. So check your PR interval, make sure it's not larger than 0.2 seconds. Remember, our range is 0.16 to 0.2. And you want to make sure that PR interval is consistent with every single heartbeat. And for this, what we're actually going to do is I'm going to zoom in a little bit more, just so that we can really identify this. Okay, it looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 4.5 boxes there. Okay, maybe 5 total. 5 times 0.04 is 0.2 seconds. That is okay. That's within range. So a okay PR interval. And then you're going to want to check the remainder of the PR intervals. Make sure that that PR interval is consistent throughout every single beat within here. And with a quick eyeball, all right, we can identify that it is okay. And sliding across here helps. Good. So that looks okay. PR interval looks all right. QRS complex shouldn't be greater than 3 small boxes. Range should be between 0.1 to 0.12 seconds, or 2.5 to 3 small boxes. And here it looks like we are also good, because I got half box there, and then I got 1, 1.5, maybe 2 boxes. And that looks pretty consistent with every single QRS complex that we come across. So I'm perfectly okay with that. So that was step 1, step 2, and step number 3. Now step number 4 is checking for abnormal beats. Well, for this one here, we don't have any abnormal beats. We haven't really talked about them quite yet, but just to kind of give you a heads up, an abnormal beat will be something that's completely different. It's what we call an ectopic beat. All right. or some type of a drop beat, late beat, something like that. So those are easily identifiable because they pop out like a sore thumb. Okay, we don't have any of those here, so that's okay. Let's move on. The next thing we're going to do, step number 5, is calculate the rate. And we're going to calculate the rate using one of those 3 methods that we've discussed in class, the 300 method, 6-second method, or the 1500. And we recall, as we discussed in class, the 1500 method and the 300 method can be used only in regular rhythms. And of those 2 methods, the 1500 method is the most accurate. It's the most accurate. So because this is a regular rhythm, we're going to go ahead and use the 1500 method. I'm going to go ahead and I'll measure and count the number of small boxes between 2 like beats. So I'll measure from there to here. And because I have this great technology where I can move this box a little bit here, I can adjust my measurement just a little bit. And I'll line it up against the heavy dark line there, and I have 5, oops, let's do this again. I got 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 31, 32 small boxes. 32 small boxes. So then I'll go 1500 divided by 32. And go pop that into the calculator, and we're going to get a rate of 46.8 or 47 beats per minute. Now that we know what the rate is, we know that that rate is less than 60 beats per minute, right? We have a regular rhythm with normal P waves all the way across. We call this rhythm sinus bradycardia. I will call it sinus brady. Okay, very good. We'll move on to the next one. And this next one is going to be a little bit faster as we go through it. All right, so we'll check for regularity. Step number 1. We'll slide across in hopes that everything is nice and normal. Okay, that one is now short. So we have here, now we're short by 2 boxes. 2 boxes. 3 boxes. 3 boxes. 4 boxes. 2 boxes. So what are we seeing here? All right, so it's slowly getting bigger. Okay. All right, we started over here. It's starting to get bigger over here, a little bigger here, between here, and bigger here, and also bigger here at the biggest point. Right? And now it's starting to shorten up again. Now this is following a pattern that we've discussed in class, and here you go. There's an even smaller here, about 1.5 boxes. Okay, so is this one regular or irregular? We're going to call this one irregular. Okay. All right, step 2, check your waves. I got P, 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 and P. And when you look at all those P waves, they all have a similar shape. None of them are just crazy out of the ordinary, so I'm not too concerned. I'm okay with saying this is likely originating from the sinus node, But you might be thinking to yourself, well, if it's sinus, it should be one of those 3 that we've talked about: normal sinus, sinus brady, sinus tachy. But don't forget, we have a 4th rhythm that is sinus, right? It's actually not a new rhythm. What it is, it's part of an interpretation, because we have what's called sinus arrhythmia, which we have a change in our regularity or change in our rate due to sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system response or stimulation. Okay, so let's go back to this. All of your P waves do look the same, so I think this is still coming from the sinus node. Step number 3 would be to check your intervals. Your PR interval looks to be within range all the way across. All right, so if we were to measure them out, let's erase that. We can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4 boxes there. 1, 2, 3, 4 boxes. 4 boxes from the beginning of the P to the beginning of the QRS complex. And that's consistent all the way across, which is a good thing. And then your QRS complex, they all look the same. They all have the same width, okay? which means they all have the same speed, which is about 1.5 to 2 boxes. And that's less than 3 boxes, so it falls within normal range. Okay. Step number 4 is checking for abnormal beats, which I don't see any abnormal beats because, again, they would be easily identifiable. Step number 5, calculate your rate. Well, when I have an irregular rhythm here, I cannot use the 300 or the 1500 method because depending on which group of QRS complexes you are selecting, that's going to change. So if I were to have done it here, we have 5, 10, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 boxes there. Well, this blue box measures up to the first 2 over here. And that's a distance of 16. So if I put 1500 divided by 16, I'm going to get somewhere close to 100. If I do it by 20, I'm going to be getting like around 75 or something like that. Okay, so that's going to be different. We don't want to be using the 1500 method here because it's irregular. So what you're going to use is you're going to use a 6-second method. So 6-second method. All right, and we're going to use your 6-second markers from there down. There down, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have a rate of 80 beats per minute. And if I have 80 beats per minute, that tells me I have normal sinus rhythm with what we call sinus arrhythmia. Sinus arrhythmia. Okay. Let's spell it right. There we go. Sinus arrhythmia. Okay, so sinus arrhythmia, let's go back to that, right? That's that pattern where we have that stimulation from the sympathetic nervous system where we have an increase in rate, which we're seeing here at the beginning. And then as it starts to expand and we get a wider and wider QRS to QRS complex, we know that's due to parasympathetic stimulation and your heart rate starts to slow down in this area right here. And then it starts picking up again over here. All right, so let's move on through. Okay, and we'll just keep using this blue box here. So there we go. Let's grab one. Okay, we'll check for regularity. And you're sliding across, looks good. Measures up okay. It's all right. And as you go all the way across, it seems to be that we have a regular rhythm. So very good. All of your waves are there. Looks like you have a P, QRST for every single beat. All of those P waves look the same. All of those QRS looks the same. All the T waves look the same. The intervals look good. No elongated PR interval. No wide QRS. No drop beats here. So let's calculate the rate. And we'll say, let's measure this up. I think I just a little bit there. Looks like we have about 12 boxes. So we'll go 1500 divided by 12. And we're getting somewhere close to 125 beats per minute. So 125, and because it's greater than 100, this is sinus tachycardia. Sinus tachy. Okay, just moving right along here. Check for regularity. Right. Looks good. Looks good. Looks good. Okay, that's regular. All right, you got your P's all there. They all look similar. Your QRSs all look the same width. All right, T waves all look good. All right. So it's coming from the same cell, right? PR interval looks good. QRS interval looks good. Looks within normal range. 0.1 to 0.12 seconds for your QRS. 0.16 to 0.2 seconds for your PR interval. No abnormal beats here. Now let's calculate the rate. I'm gonna select box here. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, plus 1, so 31. 31, so we'll go 1,500 divided by 31. And we're going to get a rate of 48 beats per minute. 48 beats per minute. 8, and that's less than 60, so we have sinus brady. Okay. Go on to the next one and check for regularity. And I'm off by 2 boxes there. And I was long by 2 boxes there. Now I'm short by 1.5 boxes. Then I'm long by 3. And now I'm long by about 4 or 5 boxes here. Okay, so this is all over the place. So we are definitely irregular here. We're irregular. So we really want to identify, well, why are we irregular? And again, when we're irregular, typically it's either a sinus arrhythmia, some type of atrial rhythm, something that we need to look at. And we know it's an atrial rhythm, likely because we have P waves here. So let's take a look and analyze these P waves a little bit. And when we're looking at the P waves, they all have similar shape. So I don't see why they would be different shapes or some type of different atrial rhythm. Let's double check that measurement again. So that lines up. All right, then it got shorter. So maybe somebody's breathing in here. And then they're exhaling now, because now that got larger. Okay, see, those P waves all look the same. So it tells me that it's still coming from the sinus node. It could be something, we have a slow rhythm here for sure, because it's really spaced apart. When we calculate the rate here, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 beats there. So we're at 60 beats per minute. All right. And this change in regularity leads us to believe that this is likely normal sinus rhythm with sinus arrhythmia. Okay. All right. Getting close here. Okay, let's go to the next one, 7.1. And here we're going to look. And at a quick glance, this one is easily identifiable as irregular. And this has no consistency at all. So this is irregular. Okay. So then step 2 is making sure that you're checking your waves, right? Check for your waves. And here what we're noticing is I don't have a discernible P wave. I cannot see a P wave here. I'm gonna go no P waves. Okay. All right. So now we've talked about irregular rhythms. We know, hey, we have a few to choose from. But all the ones that we've talked about, except for one, will give us a distinct P wave, right? And in this rhythm, remember what happens is you have multiple cells firing. Pretty much every single cell in the atrium is firing, but not one cell completely depolarizes the atrium 100%. So you have what we have here, which is these squiggly lines across the baseline or the isoelectric line. Okay. So because I have no P waves and I'm irregular, this leads us to believe that this helps us understand that this is atrial fibrillation, AFib. And because it's an irregular rhythm, we'll take our rate to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. My camera is in the way. 6. And we're gonna go 60 beats per minute. right. Our next irregular rhythm here, easily identifiable as well. We are not lining up whatsoever. So we're short, we're long, we're on, short, on, short, and on. Okay. Now, one of the first things you're going to be able to notice here is we have this, what we call sawtooth pattern, right? And there's one rhythm, only one rhythm that we know has what's called a sawtooth pattern. So we're going to go ahead and say that this is atrial flutter. Okay. And because it's an irregular rhythm, right, we're going to use a 6-second method. We'll call this one in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8. So we'll go 80 beats per minute. Now, the reason why it's irregular is because you have these different amounts of P waves between the QRSs and it's changing. For example, this one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. And that pattern is consistent. 1, 2, 3, 4. My guess is that this one is going to have just 2. Okay. So that's why some of this rhythm lines up and some of it doesn't. So the reason atrial flutter is irregular is just because of that reason alone. There are some times where you have multiple P waves, and then sometimes you'll have less P waves before your QRS. Now this one's very interesting, and I like this one because it makes you think a little bit more. So let's start with step 1, and we'll check for regularity. Now let's line this up. And you're going to notice that it's very close. That one's a little bit long. That one's on. Looks like we have just one beat that's off, but the majority of them are in line. So the majority is regular. We call this a regular rhythm, right? It's an abnormal rhythm, but with regards to the regular spacing, the regularity of spacing between QRS to QRS, yeah, it's regular. So now let's look at your P waves and your QRS complexes. All right, so let's take a look at this first one. That P wave looks like that P wave. This one is different. This one is different. All right, so whenever we have different P waves, we call it P prime, right? So that's P prime. I'm going to call it P prime 1. This one's P prime 2 because that does not look like that one. And these guys I'm going to call P waves because those look similar. And they have what a normal shaped P wave should look like. Over here, there's that little blip right there. We're going to call that another P prime. This is going to be P prime number 3, P prime number 4. And because this one looks like this one, I'm also going to call this one P prime number 4. All right, so I have 4 different cells besides the SA node trying to fire here. Okay, and it's easily identifiable because your P waves are different. Okay, so that's why step 2 is extremely important. You must also look at your waves. Okay, because if you didn't and you just checked regularity, some people might think that this might be a sinus rhythm, when in fact this is not a sinus rhythm. This is going to be wandering atrial pacemaker. Wandering pacemaker. Okay, now the debate is this. Wandering pacemaker is an irregular rhythm, and irregular rhythms should use the 6-second method. Okay, that is very true. However, the only thing that's different here in this instance is the spacing between your QRS complexes are regular. And the reason we're checking for regularity is to help delineate, well, what should I be looking for in what types of rhythms, right? Because we can classify rhythms as regular rhythms or irregular rhythms, right? When I'm looking here, this is a regular rhythm from step 1. But once I get to step 2, it's easy to see I have P primes, which supersedes or overrides this idea of regularity from step 1. So if I can identify different P waves, that tells me I have different cells firing, which ultimately means I don't have a regular rhythm, or I don't have a consistent pacemaker. Okay, so now we need to think about our irregular rhythms, and we've already identified that this is wandering atrial pacemaker because our rate is below 100 beats per minute. And although we haven't calculated it quite yet, we'll be able to do that right now. So now let's do that. Line that up, 5, 10, 15, 20, about 23. 1500 divided by 23 gives us a rate of 65 beats per minute. 65 beats per minute. Okay. All right. And with that, I'm going to leave you all with the last one to complete on your own. Thought I was going to help you with all of them. I am not. I will leave you with the toughest one on here. Okay. And for my students, if you have questions, be sure to email me. All right. I will be available, and I hope this has been helpful to kind of introduce you if you are a visitor to this page and EKG is something new to you. I hope you're able to follow along. If not, if it was a little confusing, you might want to look back and search for my video on the step process that we take to start to assess or interpret EKGs. Well, thanks for checking in with us, and hopefully catch you next time. All right, bye-bye.